Trump has been adamant that his plan to put millions of people in camps and start deporting whole families, start raiding workplaces. He says that will all start on day one at noon as he's being sworn in on Inauguration Day, January 20th. If they're really trying to make that happen, you'd have to start preparing well in advance of the inauguration, right? But that means so does the work to stop him from doing that. Today in federal court, the ACLU filed their first lawsuit seeking more information about Trump's plans to deport millions of people from this country once he takes office. As far as the ACLU is concerned, now's the time to sue. Now is the time to try to expose those plans in order to try to stop them from being carried out. Go time, in other words, is not the moment Trump becomes president. Go time is now. In California, Governor Gavin Newsom has called a special session of that state's legislature, asking them to appropriate more funding for California's state legal challenges to federal policies in the next Trump term. The Democratic governors of Colorado and Illinois, Jared Polis and J.B. Pritzker, they're leading another group called Governors Safeguarding Democracy. Essentially, it's a network of governors who are agreeing to pool resources and work together to try to oppose the policies of Trump's White House. The group's top staffer is Julia Spiegel. She says that when governors of different states come together, they can become, quote, essential force multipliers and firewalls against threats to our democracy. Joining us now is Julia Spiegel. She's the founder and CEO of GovAct, which oversees this new Governors Safeguarding Democracy initiative. Ms. Spiegel, it's nice to meet you. Thanks very much for being here.
Great to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Can you help me and our audience understand some of the practical ideas behind how this would work? The idea is Governors Safeguarding Democracy, but what does the group actually plan to do?
As you noted, Rachel, Governors Safeguarding Democracy was launched by Governors Pritzker and Polis last week. But also to your earlier point, the work has been ongoing for several weeks. What the governors are doing in coordination with governors across the country is working together to pool their resources, the best expertise out there, the best staff, to make sure that they are prepared for all the possible contingencies, whatever may come, but also to make sure that the state institutions of democracy are delivering for the people in the states. And that's really the central premise of what Governors Safeguarding Democracy is doing. And just to note, this isn't a novel or new method. It was actually pioneered by Governor Newsom in the aftermath of Dobbs when Roe was revoked by the Supreme Court. And Governor Newsom rallied other governors together, and a whole host of them have worked collectively for 2 years now to work across state lines to protect reproductive health care, including doing novel things like stockpiling abortion medication that hadn't been done previously. So we've taken that model and are really building it out now around safeguarding various contours of democracy.
You know, Julia, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you tonight is because even before this initiative came about, you have talked about the fact that governors have power when they come together. And we think of ourselves as either, atomized 50 different states or the United States as one big thing. But you've talked about this idea that governors in smaller groups can be, as you say, both a firewall and a force multiplier. Can you talk more about that, about how a dynamic between a small group of governors or maybe a medium-sized group of governors can be more effective than any of these governors could be on their own?
Governors have these extraordinary powers, some of which are very public, like the bully pulpit, but they also have these other suite of tools like the budget, signing legislation, executive authority, agencies that they oversee and run. That in and of itself is this wealth of authorities, but it's so much more powerful and impactful when those authorities are paired with each other across state lines. There are lessons learned, practices that can be adopted from one state to another, and coordinated strategy that can be undertaken to make the whole so much greater than just the sum of its parts. So that's really the premise of this work, and that Governors Polis and Pritzker are leading now in the democracy context, but across a range of offices, and are eager to work with anyone who is engaged in the work of safeguarding democracy. And I do want to note, Rachel, this work is critical no matter who sits in the White House. It's really about nurturing, supporting, and protecting the institutions of democracy. Either way, that work was undergoing years ago, and it should be undergoing years from now.
Julia Spiegel, founder and CEO of GovAct, here to talk about the new Governors Safeguarding Democracy initiative. We're going to be watching this closely. I'd love to talk with you again as things start to come together, especially before the end of the transition, Julia. Thanks for being here tonight.
It's a deal, Rachel.